as long as I work really hard to go to good school and get good jobs, I would be guaranteed a lifetime of happiness and success. I went to MIT for undergrad and UC Berkeley for law school. I'd worked at a big investment bank and I was a private equity lawyer. And when I've achieved all the goals that I wanted, I found myself very unfulfilled and very unhappy, which it was very confusing. When you no longer have that kind of a next goal to focus all of your attention on, you really have to confront what it is that you really want to do.
Welcome to the Take 1.5 podcast. This is your host, Min Lee. If you ever wondered what your next step should be, today's episode would be perfect for you. We have Celina Lee, a global career and executive coach who help people live out their dream. Welcome, Celina.
Hi everyone, it's so nice to meet you and thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Celina. I am a career and executive coach. I'm also founder of Live Your Dream Club, which is a newly launched community and group coaching program designed to help people figure out their next step and to achieve their goals and dreams. I also have a podcast named Live Your Dream Podcast. I was an investment banker and a corporate lawyer before figuring out what it is that I really wanted to do with my life. After many career transitions, I now help people pursue their dreams.
Live out your dream. I wonder how many of us really are living out our dreams.
I think this whole idea of a dream, I think some people feel bad about themselves if they haven't figured it out. But like, what are things that you want to experience and make sure that you make time for before our time is up? So I guess that's how I would define a dream. But if any of you are listening and you're like, I don't even know what I want to do, I don't have a dream, trust me, you're not alone. Most people don't know what they want to do.
So true. Somehow all those things that you dreamt of when you were younger, just put in the back burner because you have to live the life, right? You have to provide for your family, even satisfy your parents, especially as a 1.5 generation who are very, very aware that how much sacrifice their parents have, given. It's a wonderful concept, but sometimes very hard to really live out that. Like, how do you want to live your life, right? Excellent. I know that you went to all the prestigious undergrad law school and also work for a big corporate, everyone's dream, like 1.5, second generation Korean American, especially the parents, would die for to achieve these things. What were you thinking as you're achieving these goals?
Yeah, I think growing up, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted. And growing up as a Korean American, the academic achievement was highly important. Because I didn't really know what I wanted, I kind of followed what everybody else thought was good for me. And I think I somehow got this message that as long as I work really hard to go to good school and get good jobs, I would be guaranteed a lifetime of happiness and success. So I did all of that. I went to good school. I went to MIT for undergrad and UC Berkeley for law school. And I'd worked at a big investment bank and a big corporate law firm. I was a private equity lawyer. And I think I was so fixated on the next goal and then when I finished all of that, like meaning I've achieved all the goals that I wanted, I found myself very unfulfilled and very unhappy, which it was very confusing because when you no longer have that kind of a next goal to focus all of your attention on, now you really have to confront what it is that you really want to do. And I was working as a private equity lawyer at a big law firm in New York City. And I looked at my boss and, who's been practicing law, the same type of law for 20, 30 years. And I just felt like I cannot do this. When you are unhappy because you didn't achieve your goals, yeah, well, then work harder and try to achieve your goals and maybe you'll be happy then, right? But if you've achieved all the goals you wanted and then you're still unhappy, then maybe you had the wrong goal. So I had to accept the fact that I may have been in the wrong race.
Wow. I could only imagine how dark that time must have been, to achieve, like you said, you won the race, but you realize wait a minute, this is not the race that I want to be in. What was that like emotionally?
It was incredibly difficult and painful because on the outside, I looked like I had achieved it. I was working for a big law firm, and so like I had these things on the resume or the kind of jobs that, made my Korean parents proud, or other people thought I had made it. But then there was a deep sense of unfulfillment, meaning like I felt like, but this is not what I wanted. So I had all these things that other people thought I should be grateful for. Like, you have the kind of life or the job that, or the career that a lot of people would be envious of, and what do you have to complain about? So then I was kind of trying to analyze, like, why am I unhappy in this job, right? And honestly, I think achieving all those goals, going to good schools and getting good jobs, it was really hard. Like I sacrificed a lot, right? Like I couldn't sleep when other people were sleeping. I had pulled many all-nighters, as during undergrad or investment banking years, or law school, working as a lawyer, right? I had worked so hard to achieve all of these things.
Right.
So there was so much sacrifice to get to where I wanted, and then to realize, oh my God, like, but why did I do all of that for? And then, so I was trying to analyze, like, why am I so unhappy? And then one was, I was a private equity lawyer, so my whole job was to review contracts to help rich people become even richer. And that was literally the end result of my hard work. If I pull all-nighters to review these contracts, somebody else is going to be very rich and they're already rich. And then I was like, my God, I worked so hard in my life and this is what I signed up for. And I thought, if this is all I do with my life, I'd be very sad about how I spent my time. And so I think the lack of meaning, I think that was a very important part of why I was so unhappy. And another thing was, there was no freedom, As an investment banker, my gosh, like you really don't have a lot of time outside of office. And also as a corporate lawyer, very similar. And so I'm a very curious person, like just like so interested in life and the world. But there was very little time outside of work to do anything. And, it was not meaningful. And then that I didn't have freedom were the reasons at the time I analyzed myself, is why it was not a good fit. So then I decided that I'm gonna figure this out. And then it was just like totally like doesn't make sense when I think about it now. But I was like, one day, Celina, you're gonna be living a dream life where you're going to do what you love and believe is meaningful anywhere in the world, and you're going to have all this freedom to spend time in the way that you want, and then you're going to be helping people that you care about. It was kind of like a vision that I had, that one day I will get there. And then one other thing that I realized was I never allowed myself to do anything I wanted. I only did things to either, improve my resume so I can get a better job, or, study hard so I can get into good school, right? It was always to get external validation. And then whenever I had something that I wanted to do, I'd be like, oh, but how is that gonna help me get into better school, get a better job, right? I would just not allow myself. Same thing with career. Like I never asked myself what I would like or what I would enjoy.
Wow.
So I was like, from now on, I'm going to give myself permission to do the things that brings me joy, even if it has nothing to do with my job. And that was a promise I made with myself. I think that was a very pivotal moment of transition for me. Nothing had changed externally. I still have the same job, same thing. But I think internally, I became a different person. If I thought something was fun or interesting, or I'm curious about it, or I thought it was meaningful, I decided that I'm going to give myself permission to try it. Kind of a long story, but it led me to hosting a small talk show for a small cable television show, just like what you're doing today. I got to meet a lot of people who were fascinating life stories. I think what happened was, as a lawyer and investment banker, my world was very small. I was surrounded by all the people who went to similar schools and had similar credentials, similar backgrounds. and virtually a lot of them were not happy with their jobs. So I had a very bad relationship with the career. Like, oh, job's supposed to suck. That's why you get paid for it. Because I knew that like I needed to meet different people for my world to change. But when I met people who like really enjoy what they were doing and they were getting paid for it, and then they were also very successful. And I remember this one person who was an entrepreneur, and he said, Celina, I love what I do so much that not doing it is not an option. That's what I want. I'm gonna try to get that too. So that led to me writing a book and getting it published. Actually, in Korea, it's called 꿈을 이뤄드립니다. I had interviewed successful Korean Americans about their journey to living their dreams, and then I got published in Korea. I was, a young person or younger person who really didn't know the direction of my life, and I wanted to meet mentors. And my biggest question then and also now is like, how do people figure out what they want to do with their life? Eventually, I started my podcast, and just by random chance, I discovered the world of coaching. Just because I was active in the community, someone had invited me to some fellowship leadership program in New York City. And then the program had sponsored coaching. And it was really life-changing. I was like, for the first time in my life, I had someone who was not my family or not my friend, so who could be very objective, ask me really good questions to learn about myself, and then to really be honest with myself. And then to set goals that were aligned with who I am and who I wanted to become, and then hold me accountable to actually achieve them. I decided to enroll in the same coaching school that my coach went through, still telling myself that I'm not really quitting law because I was very scared. First day of school, I felt like I came home. It was like the weirdest feeling. Oh my gosh, like I can just be me and do this really well. It was a professional feeling of coming home. It was like felt like I was wearing really comfortable clothes that fit me really well. And then everything kind of made sense. I was like, oh my God, like I needed to go through all of this pain. Because I remember when I was going through that painful time was I didn't know who to talk to about what I was going through. Like when you are struggling with your next step and you don't really know what you want, like who do you go to? Like nobody. There was like everybody was miserable around me, right? I think in a way I became the person that I needed.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? You become the person that you wanted at the moment, when you're going through stuff. That's how it works for me too. I become the person that I needed. Yeah. So dreams do come true.
Yes.
Especially for Celina Lee.
I'm not special. It really can't be for so many of us if you can just be honest about what you want and then give yourself permission to try it.
So you sound to me like a go-getter because many of us do think about these things. What do I really want to do? Or how do I want to live my life? But we always come up with reasons why we cannot, or we cannot at this moment. So I went on your website last night and I took the quiz.
Oh, yes, it's on the quiz. Yes. What's the one thing, standing between you and a fulfilling career?
My thing was procrastination.
Which is so many of us struggle with it, myself included.
So tell me, how do I get over it?
How to stop procrastinating, taking action. Yeah, that's a hard one for so many of us. When people say, oh, you procrastinate, we think that it's because you're lazy or, oh, I'm lazy, right? Actually, what's really making us procrastinate is fear. The fear of like not doing a good job, the fear of what if it doesn't work out. And also people are really, really afraid of, what if like the performance is not good, it's actually really interesting. Like some people will intentionally not try as hard, because if you didn't try hard and then you didn't do a very good job, then you can be like, oh, I didn't try that hard. But if you really tried hard and you didn't do a good job, you're like, oh, I must be stupid, So there's a lot of difficult emotions that are blocking us from moving forward, right? Like we can only focus on so many different goals. So like, is this really, really what you want? Or are you telling yourself you should do it because, either it's going to impress your parents or, they're going to be happy with you, or everybody else thinks you should, I think first, really getting clear about what is that you really want, and then whether it is a right goal for you, that you want it. Then it's actually helpful to create some accountability. In the beginning, because of inertia, like it's really hard to get it moving. Let's say if you have like a gigantic ball, right? That's like super heavy. In order for you to push it, that there needs to be a lot of force, a lot of power, and you push the ball, right? But once it gets going, it's actually just rolling, right? Knowing that in the beginning, you need to like do certain things to make sure that the ball starts rolling. So for example, I'll give you, actually, this is timely because I recently launched my Live Your Dream Club. And I had this idea of, creating a community to help people pursue their dreams, where people like support each other, and also a group coaching program where I'm going to be teaching all the content and coaching framework that I teach to my private clients. I had this idea for many years, and I never took action because I was afraid. I think underneath my procrastination was this fear that this was so important to me that if it didn't work out, that I would feel like a massive failure because this was my life's work, right? So this is the year, and I'm gonna like make this happen because I didn't want another several years to go by and regret not having given it a try, right?
Yeah.
So here are a few things that I think helped me. Was I shared my dream with as many people, anyone who would listen, right? And I always talk about this to my clients too, right? A lot of people don't talk about their goals and dreams because they're like, oh, but if I don't make it happen, like I'm gonna be so embarrassed, or like, so there's a lot of self-rejection because no one can achieve their dreams alone. You always need someone to support you, right? So I just started to talk about it with a lot of people. It kind of helped me to feel comfortable talking about it, helped me to also refine my idea, right? And because my friends like helped me to brainstorm. And then once I told enough people about it, then it's like, well, it's like super embarrassing if I don't do anything. Like next time they're like, Celina, what happened to your maybe club? Be like, oh, sorry, I didn't, that's embarrassing, right? I gave myself a firm deadline. So you see, like, even though it was really hard, there were some actions I've done in the beginning. And then also, most importantly, I asked for help. I knew that it's something that I couldn't do by myself. So I asked my friends to, help me brainstorm. Like, it was really hard to ask for help though, because, I would rather be helping them than ask for help. Maybe it has to do with being Korean American, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I felt kind of bad about, burdening them, right? But then I knew that like when the table has turned and they asked me for my help, I'd be so excited to help them, Yeah, and then so that's what I did to stop procrastinating. And then we just launched this January, and then about to start a new session next week.
Congratulations. That sounds so exciting. Wow. Your life's work.
My big dream, I'm going to say it, I would love one day for there to be different chapters of Live Your Dream Club in many different cities around the world, and then for them to have their own events, and that would be the most amazing dream. And then that is what I'm working towards.
Wow. Yes. Yes to that dream. You go, Celina.
But I'm like, but I am not special. Like, I really don't think I'm any different. It's just that I gave myself permission to try things, taken enough action that sometimes some of those things work out, right? And you actually don't need a lot of opportunities to change the course of your life. But if you're out there trying a lot of different things, chances are one or two or a few of those things might work out, and not just might change your life. So if anyone listening, it's like, oh, I want to do something, but, I may not be capable. Just give yourself permission to take a lot of action, and then you never know.
What does it mean to give yourself permission?
Yeah, I think it's really understanding the way in which you might be standing in your own way of living the life that you want. And a lot of people actually are not aware. We have been brainwashed, especially the Korean American or Asian American 1.5. There's a lot of stories that we have been told that we have adopted as our own. So like values are actually not like same thing as morals or ethics. Like, if you're living your value, it doesn't mean doing the right thing. It means doing the things that makes you feel right. But a lot of times we confuse, like we have inherited values. Maybe our parents have told us like go to good school and become a doctor or lawyer, and that is the only way you're going to be a successful human being or whatever. Like there may be a lot of stories that we've been told that we have internalized as our own, and then we believe those are what we want, and a lot of times that's not true. So really understanding like what are my values and what do I really want, and then to understand in what ways have I been standing in my own way? It's a lot of times it's like a fear of failure or fear of rejections that we actually don't give ourselves permission. Like, for example, like when I was writing my book, my mom said that, it's never going to happen because like in her own loving way. And this might be a good story for your listeners because I think for people who have Korean moms, they can be very loving and sacrificing, but in a very tough way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And like for let's say, so for some people who are like, oh, they have creative dreams, maybe like they want to write a book or something, and then or we have people around us who discourage us from giving ourselves permission. And then we actually believe them. We internalize that, it's actually what they're saying is actually true. And but I wanted to actually write a book in Korean, get it published, just to see if I could do it. And she thought like it's never gonna happen. Who do you think you are? And I was really hurt when she was so against my because it was actually writing a book was my childhood dream. She said, not gonna happen for you. Like so, I was really upset. Choose a thought that serves you, right? So I could either believe that, oh yeah, mom, you're right, and like, who am I to think that I could write a book? But
Right.
instead of thinking, oh, it's not going to happen, or what if it doesn't happen, I decided to ask myself a different question. What if it does happen? What if I can write it? What if I do write it and get it published and it's read by lots of people and it helps them? How wonderful would that be? And then it did get published and it was read by lots of people. And then that I think was really the way that my direction of my life changed. And because after my book got published, I became a speaker and then I was giving lots of talks. And then, of course, my mom was like, bragging to her friends. Like, oh, look at my daughter who like wrote this book. And
Right.
but I told her that like you don't even have any bragging rights. Parents actually don't know what is best for us because they're not us, right? It's they're just trying to project their own insecurities onto us, or maybe their role as a parent is to protect their children from failing or getting hurt. And so if from their point of view the role you're about to embark on has a high rate of failure, they're going to do everything they can to try to stop you, right? So sometimes not listening to your parents could be helpful. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now,
Right.
right? Imagine the world where everybody gives themselves a permission to do the things they want to do, right? We'll have better world, we'll have better services, we'll have better products. There will be many more inventions and creative work. We'll have many more books and poems and literature and film. That would be an amazing world. Like I want to live in that world, right? Where then I think that like relationships will improve, our health will improve. Like I think this is one of the biggest problems that we face as a humanity, because one of the biggest regret people have on their deathbed is that they didn't have the courage to honor their own dreams and that they lived a whole life trying to fulfill the expectations of other people around them and not for themselves, right? The reason why I'm dedicated my whole life to this mission is because that is the world that I want to live in, and this is my small way of contributing in, creating that world for all of us.
I've always been that mother who said, follow your passion, do what you love, right?
Yeah.
What do you say to those young people who's getting this mixed message?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I know that when I was kind of in that kind of period of my life where I didn't really know what I wanted to do next, which is where a lot of people find themselves in. And I read lots of books and went to talks and because I was really desperate. And virtually everybody was telling me to follow my passion, right? And I felt like that advice wasn't as helpful for me at the time because I was like, I don't know what my passion is. So like I felt like something was wrong with me for not knowing it, right? So I think if there are people listening who's like, oh, I wish I could follow the passion, I just don't know what it is. Something I've learned is to follow your curiosity instead, right? Passion is like this burning, screaming thing. You're supposed to do this with your life. Curiosity is more like a whisper. It's like, oh, I've always was really interested in writing, and when I was trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, that like I revisited that voice. And for years I suppressed it. I was like, oh, I'm a lawyer. Who am I to write a book? I should just focus on my career success. And I think when I decided to really be honest about what I wanted, I think that little voice came back to me. So instead of, really telling yourself that, oh, I gotta like figure out the one thing, or like gotta follow my passion. I would say take it lightly. Don't take it too seriously. I think we're like, oh my God, I gotta like figure out my whole life out. That is like very intimidating, and then you wouldn't even know what to do. And to know that you can also be more than one thing. That's something that I wish I had known. I thought like my whole life had to be about me being a lawyer, right? But I'm still a lawyer. I'm still licensed to practice. Hopefully you never go back again. But I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a coach, and I am, a podcast host. I'm a writer. I'm an entrepreneur. I am many of those things, and I'm open to exploring other paths too. So to know that like whatever you're working on, it doesn't have to define you. To be nice to yourself, like if you're kind to yourself, even if something doesn't work out, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. You worked on something and it was not a good fit. That's okay. You just move on to the next thing. And I really, really believe this. Everybody has unique gift and different talents and skill sets. But if we try to pigeonhole ourselves into some formula for what a good, successful person might look like 20, 30 years ago, it might not be a good match, right? In fact, we live in a world where we no longer just have one job and, work there for 20, 30 years and retire. That world is over maybe in our parents' generation or even before, right?
So here comes a tough question, Celina.
Sure.
And I'm sure many Korean parents are asking, so how do you make a living? All in
Yeah.
your dream.
I actually didn't know how I would make a living doing what I love. Actually, remember the visualization that I had years ago when I was working as a lawyer to do what I love anywhere in the world and travel and meet people and, get paid to help people, right? I do that every single day. Like I'm in Korea now. I'm usually based in New York City, but I was recently in Tokyo, and then I was in Dubai to give a talk last year. I went to Abu Dhabi. And also I was in Paris. I lived there for over a month because in that visualization, I was like, when I do have this life of freedom and meaning, I'm going to go to Paris and I'm going to live there for 1 month. So, and then I achieved it, right? So I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe and so if I hadn't given myself permission to really understand what am I good at and what I could actually get paid for, I think I would still be building hours, some law firm or some, reviewing contracts, right? And not that I couldn't do it. Like I'm a very diligent person, so I could do that and get paid for it, but I would not be doing what I love, right? So I think it takes courage. It takes courage to actually try the things that you want, even when you are not sure if it would work out. So when I left law to pursue coaching full time, I was already very established as a lawyer, but I was not established as a coach, right? Nobody knew me as a coach. It was a leap of faith, but also I think it was intuition. I had this internal voice that said, Celina, you gotta give this coaching thing or try. Otherwise, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. Even when there's a lot of uncertainty, which is very scary for human beings because we're very afraid of the uncertain future. If there's a little voice, curiosity, or whatever it may be, is telling you that you might want to give that a try, like have the courage to try it out. And then that little curiosity may reveal what your passion is or develop into a passion. And that's what happened to me. So I think having faith and trusting yourself and trusting your journey and to really be kind to yourself throughout the process because, being a human is really hard. Being Korean American is really hard, harder.
I'm interested in hearing about your experience as being a Korean American 1.5 generation living in the States, growing up in the States. What was the most difficult thing for you?
Back when I was growing up, unlike now, being Korean or Korea as a country was not cool, right? You remember, right?
Hmm.
So, like I said before, I was born in California. I was born in LA, and then my dad had a job that kept moving him around. When I was like a baby, maybe 3, 4 years old, our family moved to Korea. And I went to elementary school. And then towards the end of seventh grade, we came back to Southern California. So I actually learned English as a teenager. I was 13 or 14 at the time. It's a tough time. Like middle school is a tough time for everyone, but especially for someone who's from a different culture, different background, doesn't speak the language. It was incredibly painful. And all you want to do is fit in, but all the kids will remind you that you're very different. And yeah, and now that Korea is such a cool country, it's just I can't believe this is happening.
Right.
So it's actually very interesting because at the time, me being Korean or speaking Korean was not a good thing. It gave me so much pain because I got
Mm,
bullied so much, right? But
right.
now that I'm older, it became my one of my biggest strength, right? So
It's interesting because a lot of guests on my podcast share story of growing up, and they always start with, because Korea is such a cool country right now. The different perspective between the children and the parents on being Korean American or American in this country,
that's right.
right? What is your advice now that you're all grown on navigating that?
I think that's a tough one because even if you are from the same culture and speak the same language, there's still kind of a generation gap. But you add that to the language barrier or the cultural barrier, right? That's really, really tough because I know that a lot of like my friends, many of them who are Korean American don't speak Korean very well, and it's not their fault. During when I was growing up, there's been supposedly some studies that said if you are bilingual, if your children grow to be bilingual, it's going to confuse them and it's going to hinder them in their academic progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of course the Korean parents when they hear that, they're going to make sure that you speak to their children in English right at home, right? But then of course the parents, it's hard for them to be fluent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you can't even talk to your own children because the parents speak Korean and the kids don't speak Korean very well, right? So there's a lot of challenges navigating that relationship, right? I think what I would hope for both children and their parents is to be compassionate and kind to their own experiences, right? So like something that comes up a lot in my coaching session with a lot of my clients is because
Mm-hmm.
some of them are Korean American or Asian American, is that like they're very hurt by the way that their parents raised them, right? Um, and of course, that could be really, really difficult because your childhood experiences shape who you become, right? But also to understand that like parents cannot teach what they've never learned.
Mm-hmm.
If their grandparents didn't teach their children, our parents, like how to talk to your children in a kind way, because they
Mm-hmm.
think that like criticizing you is encouraging you, right?
Right,
It's like
right.
their love language, right? Um, then like you really cannot be mad at someone who's from that generation, right? So it's
Mm,
almost like we have to play the role of being their translator. Oh, what they really
mhm,
mean is, and of course it's hard, but when you understand that your parents are just people and human too, and they're product of their
mhm,
own generation, and they cannot teach you what they've never learned themselves, then you could be a little bit more empathetic and understanding, and that could really be liberating too, right? For the parents, I think uh, even though it comes from a good place of making sure that your children are protected and they have a secure job and all that, that your view of what makes a good life may be very different from what your children's perspective and their goals are, right? And I think what's challenging is that especially in an immigrant family, because we're very tight and very close to each other, and we had to do that to survive. That somehow I think parents think that children are extension of themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they try to live out all the wishes and dreams that they never got to live for
Right.
themselves, and they
Mm-hmm.
try to. So that's why you should become a lawyer, a doctor, to really help them to become who they want to become and to be patient with that process. So I think that's what I wish that parents would really have for their children, because I know the deep core is love and wanting the children to do well, right? And also know that, like, as a parent, like, because you lived in a certain era, like the world you lived in is
Mm-hmm.
going to be very different from the world that your children will live. When you approach the relationship with empathy and understanding and with an open mind, I think it could really open up communication. You can understand each other better. It's a difficult topic for sure.
Yeah, that's a really great wisdom and insight that you just shared. Yeah, a lot to think about. So, you're doing all this wonderful work globally. You're living out your dream and also helping others to live out their dream. What is most important thing for you right now?
Yeah, so what I've been focusing the most on lately is obviously the launch of Live Your Dream Club. It is my life's work.
Mm-hmm.
I have a big vision of how to grow this community, and a lot of times there's really, really, really feel alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that Live Your Dream Club can become that community where you might be having a bad day, but here's a place where you feel not alone and that there's nothing wrong with you, and then we're cheering for you. And personally, I'm visiting my parents right now, so they're getting older, so I'm hoping that I can spend more time with them. Yeah, I'm trying to do my daughterly duties. When I interview guests on my podcast,
Mm-hmm.
there's a one question I ask everybody at the end is like, who helped you to get to where you're now?
Oh,
And then
great question.
there's a lot of interesting stories, amazing stories. 'Cause, it just goes to show that we're all here because somebody from somewhere helped us to get to where we are. And we may not be able to pay them back for their kindness,
Mm,
but we can also always pay forward to somebody
that's
else
right.
who might be needing help. And that is the whole mission of Livia Gym Club.
That's right. So let me ask you that question. Who helped you
Oh,
to be here?
well, so many people. One is my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and she was born in the wrong time, like the worst
Mm,
time in Korean history. She went through the Japanese occupation era and also Korean War. But I think she always made sure that, like, she's not defined by her circumstances, and she always had the courage to stand up for what she believes in. Her dream was to go to college to become a teacher,
mhm.
and but it was during the Japanese occupation era, and she led a movement against the Japanese. Because she was a leader, she got arrested, got expelled from her high school 1 month shy of graduation. So because she didn't have a high school diploma, she couldn't go to college and she couldn't achieve her dream of becoming a teacher. And I remember she always had that regret. So it taught me, one, the importance of, like, honoring your dreams. Like, so whenever I think about what I want to do in my life, and sometimes I have a lot of fear, but I'm like, I think about my grandmother, and then I think about, if she was so lucky to be born in my time, what would she have done? With all these
Mhm.
opportunities. My life, and my freedom is a result of so many sacrifices that came before us, not just my grandmother, but so many people ahead of us who paved the way of, creating this world for us. So, that I shouldn't take it lightly. So I think those lessons always kind of stay with me.
You're much like your grandmother, paving the
Oh,
way.
that is very kind of you. But I'm just doing my small little part. Another person is my eighth grade English teacher. When I was, struggling trying to learn English as a teenager, I felt like a second class citizen when I was in ESL class.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people listening might relate to that. So I thought, if I learn English and I can enroll in a regular English class, um, maybe these kids will stop making fun of me. So I went to my eighth grade English class teacher. His name was Mr. David Weiss.
Mhm.
And then I said, Mr. Weiss, I really cannot keep up with the schoolwork. Like it takes me 10 hours to look up just the words I don't know. And so I thought he would either make me go back to ESL or give me some kind of break on the homework, you know? He said, Celina, like you can do this. Like you really can do this. Like I really believe in you. You can, you know? And then I left that conversation thinking, oh, he didn't really give me any, break on the homework, right? And then a few days later, he made us write an essay of any topic, you know. I wrote about this girl who was really sad and lonely and didn't have friends and was getting bullied a lot. You know, myself, right? But eventually, you know, she becomes this person who's very successful and achieves her dreams and helps a lot of people. I forget exactly what I wrote. And then I turned it, and I guess it was like my way of kind of like thinking about my future self that I wanted to become. And then after I turned it in, you know, a few days later, Mr. Weiss was talking to the classroom and said, we have a wonderful writer in our class, and said, Celina, why don't you read your essay out loud for everyone? And I was like, what? Like he's never done it before. So of course I obliged, and I, you know, read the essay. And he was like, and then after I finished reading, it's like a round of applause. He made everyone clap for me. He's like, you should all learn to be a writer, like great writer like Celina. And I honestly don't know if that essay was all that fantastic. I have no idea, but I think he did it to really encourage me, you know. And then what happened that day was when I was at the rock bottom of my life, you know, and it was very, very sad time of my life. And there's someone who lifted me up like a champion. And that words of encouragement made all the difference. Because he really, you know, lifted me up when I really didn't really like myself, you know, and that how others saw me change, and most importantly, how I saw myself changed. And that made all the difference. So I will always remember him. And I tried to look for him and I couldn't find him, you know, so I about him everywhere I go. Hope that my story would reach him. And I think that's why I do the work that I do now, because I know that like the words of encouragement, you know, that someone hears at a moment that is really needed can literally change someone's life. And that's what happened to me. So I'm really, really deeply thankful to him. My 8th grade English teacher is one of the person who changed my life too.
Oh, it's so amazing to hear these little moments that we encounter could really change our perspective and make lasting impact.
Like people will remember how you made them feel.
Yes. Amen to that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Celina. I really appreciate your time. Yeah.
Yeah, this was so much fun, and I hope that my story, if you know whoever's going through your life journey, career journey, I hope my stories have been helpful to you. And you know, if you're kind of going through some tough times, know that you're not alone. Like you're gonna figure it out. So I hope that you can trust yourself and trust your journey.
That's right. Thank you so much. You know, personally, I